In this video, I'm going to show you what I call the matrix of light. This is an easy system that will help you understand the 5 crucial lighting types for portrait photography. Later in this video, I'm also going to show you how I use these lighting types with natural light and with off-camera flash. By the end of this video, you'll be able to create stunning portraits with any lighting setup. Light is the magic ingredient to portrait photography. It can transform a good photo into a great one, and it can make a bad photo look even better. But with so many different lighting types and techniques to choose from, it can be hard to know where to start. In photography, there are rules, but these rules can be broken to achieve a high level of creativity. However, it is important to understand these rules before you can break them. To show you these 5 lighting types, I've opted to use a harsh light by using only a reflector on my light source. I did this so that you can see the light clearly with the harsh shadows it creates. Later, however, I will show you the difference between 4 light sources and what quality of light they create. Have a look at this scene from the movie Joker. Do you see the light source hitting the Joker on the left? This light type is called split lighting. It's an easy setup in which you put your light source left or right of your model. It's however important that the light cuts the subject in half to create a pure split light. Split lighting is often used to create power or drama into an image, and it also works really well with black and white images. If you enjoy dramatic photos or black and white portrait photography, then this lighting technique is perfect for you. Take a look at how beautifully the light falls on Clint Eastwood in this scene. Rembrandt lighting is named after the famous artist Rembrandt van Rijn, who frequently used this technique in his paintings. To achieve a good Rembrandt lighting, position a high light source at about 45-degree angle pointing down at your model from either the left or the right. The shadow of the model's nose should cross the shadow of the cheekbone. Achieving this look may be more challenging if the model has a short nose or small cheekbones, but you can adjust the height and angle of the light to experiment. It is not necessary for the eye on the shadow side to have light, but you can choose to add it if you so desire. Here is a tip to help you choose which side of the model's face to use the light for photographing the model. Ask the model to look at the camera and then ask her to look to one side without thinking. The side they turn towards the camera should be the side where you should set up your main light. The issue with broad light is that it will make a bigger person look even bigger in the face, which is not flattering because, let's be honest, who wants to look bigger? It can, however, make a slim face look slightly bigger, which can help for a specific look. To create broad light, your main light needs to be from the direction of the broadest side of the face of your model. In this case, from the right. Can you see that this side is broader than the left side? Very important with broad light is that the nose shadow must not cross the cheek on the left, because that will then become Rembrandt light. One last thing is that both eyes must have light in them from the main light. So what have I learned while making this video searching for a broad light example? After searching for at least half an hour for a good movie example for you guys, I could not find one and I just gave up. What I did find is that Rembrandt lighting, and the next lighting type I'm going to talk about, is being used almost everywhere. Look at the following scenes from this television series and movie. Here Harvey Specter in Suits is talking to Mike Ross. Do you notice the light? A very iconic movie scene, and this might give away my age, is the scene from The Matrix where Morpheus and Neo discusses the blue and red pill. Notice how the lighting highlights Morpheus here, and then the same lighting is applied to Neo. This is my favorite lighting type and the one I use the most. It's flattering for most models and creates a strong look in images. Short lighting is essentially the opposite of broad lighting. In this case, the main light should come from the short side of the face. Here you can see the right side is the short side, while the left side is the broader side. Due to the shadows created by this lighting type, the broad side appears smaller, resulting in a more flattering look. As per broad lighting, the shadow of the nose should not cross the shadow of the cheek, and both eyes should receive light from the main light source. When using short light, the face of the subject will appear smaller, which is usually desirable. The last lighting type before we hit the streets for some natural light and off-camera flash is butterfly lighting. This type of lighting is often used for beauty shots. Here are a few examples of magazine covers where it was used. It is also commonly used for fitness shots because it makes the muscle stand out even more. To achieve this look, position your light source at ±45-degree angle in front of your model. For certain facial features such as bigger or smaller cheekbones or a longer or shorter nose, you may need to adjust the height of the light. The goal is to create a butterfly-like shadow under the nose. You will see that the cheekbones are being carved out by the shadows, creating a very flattering look. In a moment I will show you what this technique looks like with some added light and a softer look. One important warning regarding butterfly lighting is to avoid creating a long shadow from the nose that crosses the lips. Here you can see what happens when I move the light just a bit and eventually the shadow of the nose crosses the lips, resulting in bad lighting. Let's have a look at a different light source called a beauty dish, and I have also added a honeycomb to it. A honeycomb stops the light from going all over the place and gives you better direction of light. Later I will show an example. In this photo I have added a light from behind for her hair and a silver reflector from the bottom. The reflection makes the shadows even softer by filling it with light. You might think that this is short light because the model's face is turned to the light source and it being from the short side. The difference is that the light is casting that butterfly shadow under her nose and not from the side. This brings us to that rule breaking that I mentioned in the beginning. It does not matter from what direction it really comes. You can create butterfly lighting or any other lighting for that matter from any side. Here is a split lighting shot I did with natural light as an example. More natural light examples later in the video. I have a few examples I have taken with a 90cm octabox paired with a honeycomb grid. Here is a Rembrandt portrait with softer light, a broad light, and then also the short light. Note that the background does not have much light on it because of the honeycomb. With this last example, I used the 90cm octabox again with the grid and light from behind. I went full power on my light in order to create the dark background and added a reflector from the bottom. This was the result. The following example, also short light, I have added an extra light on her hair and I used a bigger 120cm octabox with no honeycomb grid. The first amazing thing you will see is that the shadows are way softer and more flattering. You will however also notice more light on the background. This however is personal preference and it depends on the kind of look that you want to create. The conclusion we get from using different light sources is that how bigger the light source, the softer the light, or then the shadows. The reason for this is that a big light source wraps around your subject and it fills the shadow areas. With this in mind, let me show you how to use a few of these lighting types with natural light. In the first portrait, I used the reflector positioned on the right hand side. I instructed the model to look down the street, creating a short light and a flattering look. In the closer portrait, you can see the shadow created by the reflector on the wall. The light is soft and pleasing due to the size of the reflector. Holding the reflector as close as possible helps create a large light source, enhancing the softness of the light. Here you can see a butterfly light created with the reflector placed close to the subject, resulting in a beautiful soft light. The image almost appears that it has been taken in a studio rather than on the street. With a big light source in mind mentioned earlier in this video, I saw this wall on the left and I could see how the light reflected on the stairs, and I just knew it could create a beautiful soft light due to its size. Here is an example of a broad light versus a short light. Tell me in the comments, which do you prefer? I found this back alley behind a building in town and loved the light angle. I used the reflector from the left and again angled her face in order to create a beautiful short light for these two images. This image, I used a Rembrandt light, but at a complete different angle. Like I mentioned, rules can be broken to get creative. It's very important to choose the light angle you want to use, and with that said, in this image the reflector light is too low, causing what I call ghost lighting. Remember how you scared your sibling with a torch under the chin in the dark? By lifting the reflector, I managed to get a better, softer look. Here is one more example in which you can clearly see a nice softer shadow under the nose instead of the nose shadow going upwards as per the previous image. The lighting in this image is very even and it's hard to spot what kind of light it is. Although it does not matter what it is, and as long as it works, I've pulled down as much contrast in the image as possible for you to see that it is butterfly lighting. There is a very small shadow under her nose, but what helps us identify it even better is the carved out cheekbones. Another way to create beautiful soft butterfly lighting with natural light is to use a scrim and shoot with the sun. Here's an example. It's important to know that the sun is not my light source here, but the scrim. And because the scrim is big and close to my model, it creates beautiful soft light. This old antique shop for the next shot had a big window, and because of the size of windows, they are excellent for creating soft light. Here is an example of a short light, and this is a split light. Which one do you like? Changing my shooting angle and her position slightly made for this beautiful soft light coming from the window. Due to her face angle being slightly lower, it created a beautiful butterfly light which complements her face a lot. Outside again, and there was a big wall behind me on my left, hitting her face on the left. The first example is a broad light and the second is short. In this case, I think most might like the broad light. I think I do. Last example before we talk about off-camera flash is this photo at a huge church building that was behind me on my left. The first example is a broad light, but just because her face was slightly off to the right. The next is again short light, and I think by now you get the idea that short light is my favorite. Off-camera flash is something that can be used in 1,000 different ways, and there is no right way. So what I'm going to show you is how to set up an exposure the right way, and from there it's all yours to play with. The most effective way to use a flash, whether on or off camera flash, outdoors or indoors at an event, is initially to switch off your flash. With your flash off, get your camera settings to the desired exposure of your background. Before we continue, something very important to know is that there is a synchronizing speed between a camera and a flash. Most has a sync speed of between 200 shutter speed and 250 shutter speed. This means that your camera shutter cannot be higher than that. You can shoot at a small aperture like f8 or f11 to be able to do that. If however you want to shoot at a wide aperture like f2, there are two things you can do. Either use a flash with high speed sync capabilities, or you can use a neutral density filter that will darken the scene in order to use a wider aperture. For this shoot, I used the Godox AD100 Pro that has a high speed sync so that I could use a wide aperture of f2. I will link it down below for you guys. Here is my photo without a flash. Once you have taken your base photo, you can turn on the flash. This process may involve trial and error, so don't worry about it. Take the first photo. If the photo is overexposed, do not adjust your camera settings. Instead, adjust the flash settings and take another shot. Note that most flashes need to discharge by flashing them once or twice if they have been powered up. Most flashes has a button you can press for the flash to go off. Here is my speed light button, and by pressing it, the flash goes off. This step is important to ensure the correct exposure. After discharging your flash, take a photo, repeat this process until you are satisfied with your exposure. Here is my base photo, overexposed and while exposed photo with short light. Once you have your exposure, you can move the model in any direction as long as the distance between the model and the flash stays the same. If the distance changes, the exposure will too. Here is one more photo at the same location. We have slightly changed our location and need to start over. First set the base exposure and then switch on the flash. As you become more familiar with the equipment you have, this process will become easier. Here the flash is turned on. Again moved a bit. Here is a base exposure, then the flash, and as you can see it was overexposed. Here is the exposure I like, and again I used short light. Examples of the kind of lighting I don't like is when the background is dark and the model almost looks pasted on it. Here is an example of what I don't like, and here is how I would expose it. Move to a different spot again, and here is an example of a dark background and flash used. Personally, I like the background exposed better with this flash exposure. Now that you know how to use light, click on this video to see how to take better photos in bad locations. Cheers.